This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Conversations, we turn to oil and gas, where the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, OPEC Plus, has increased the August oil production quota by 548,000 barrels per day. OPEC Plus has been increasing its oil production quota starting in March and running until June, while restating that it is constantly reviewing global market conditions. We're joined in the conversation by Ayodele Oni, who is an oil and gas expert. Mr. Oni, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start out with getting a sense of your of this particular story and, just this increase in the numbers of barrels that are going to be produced. Was it an expected increase?
Yes, it was. There were already those conversations about OPEC Plus increasing quotas from conversations and the expected meeting, particularly around what would happen in August, right? So I'm not surprised. It always seemed like something that would happen. And also recall that the idea is to ensure that there's a balance between the negatives, that's the geopolitical challenges. The geopolitical challenges you see in the Middle East, the trade issues you see worldwide, particularly relating to the US and other countries, those were likely going to drive down, of course, the geopolitical challenge will drive up prices, the trade issues will drive down prices. So it's such of a balance. For the OPEC Plus countries, the idea is for them to ensure that they can make the most of whatever increase there is in oil prices if the geopolitical tensions do not go down. So it was always a conversation that oil prices, they were going to increase output. That had had for at least a month or two now.
So tell us what it means for Nigeria. Good news or bad news?
Well, it depends. If prices go if it's market forces of demand and supply, right? If quantities available, if supply goes up, prices will go down. It's only when demand surpasses supply that prices will go up. Right. That said, that's not the only factor. The other factors, you may even have an increased output if there is war in a country that is a reasonable supplier of crude. Iraq, Iran, Saudi, all of those countries, if there's a challenge there, of course, oil prices will go up, and it then forges a balance. So could be good for us, could be bad, depending on other factors like the geopolitical tensions. If those come to play a role, it then means that prices will at least be stable or will go up slightly, even with the increase in output. So it's not absolutely certain what it will be. In the immediate, you might think at least prices will be stable and will not go up any further, but you never really know. So it depends. If prices go up, and we can prices go up, and we also are producing enough. Remember that our budget benchmark is, I think, 2,003,000 or 2,006,000 and $75 as the benchmark for the pricing, but for output is a little over 2 million, 2,006,000 or 2,003,000. I'm not quite sure now. So I think it's not absolutely certain I would go, but increasing it initially would seem like prices will go down or at least will be stable, but wouldn't go up. But if other factors come to the fore and those factors are stronger, prices will still go up. And if we can produce more, which appears to be the case recently, it will then be beneficial to us from a forex standpoint. But from a consumer standpoint, if prices go up, of course, at the pumps, prices will continue to go up in Nigeria despite best efforts, because even if you refine locally, you are buying crude internationally,
right,
unless government does a deal where you are buying it at a reduced price, which still means that there's some form of subsidy. But if it's absolute market based or market driven pricing, then at the pumps prices will go up. But if crude oil prices go down at the pumps too, it should go down.
Yeah, I mean,
which will be good for consumers.
we've sort of seen that in the last few weeks with when tensions rose with Iran, we did see the increase, and then we've seen a recent decrease in the last week or two or so. But Mr. Oni, it's interesting that when we discuss OPEC quotas, the first thing we discuss in Nigeria related to Nigeria is around the pricing. When we come to the output itself, you've already mentioned what our target is for the year. It's been our target since this particular administration came into office. Trouble is that we're still not able to meet up to the 1.5 million barrels per day that OPEC Plus set as our quota. It's been our quota, I think, since from last year into this year. We're averaging about 1.4 million, and then condensates take us to about 1.7 once in a while. So speak to us about this disparity and just the extent to which we're on the back foot, and what else the oil and gas sector could offer us in the event that prices actually do fall well below that $75 per barrel mark.
Okay, so good point. The challenge is just like the way we discuss inflation. Inflation is 21. Inflation could be 30 something for 30 something. And we drive it down up to a point where it reaches maybe 11, but we never break the barrier of double digits. The same thing for our production. And it's historical too. Those historical challenges have been there. This administration is pushing a lot to remove those barriers, but if you've had something there for 20 years, it's difficult to remove it in 1 or 2 years. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a bit difficult. So that's why best efforts, those historical issues around infrastructure, around theft, you would see that the Upstream Commission set up a system where you can track real time. They are putting together the infrastructure, but the regulations have been already prepared, right? Government is also trying to bring in incentives. So historically, our production has gone down. If you look at what happened in Ogoni land, for a long time there was no production. That's why Shell sold to Mr. Tony Elumelu's company. They couldn't just figure it out. Once you killed the Ogoni 9, there was crisis and production couldn't happen. Every now and then you also hear that there was arson, someone had bombed an export pipeline, or a terminal. So if you have those sort of issues, of course, people can't. And at some point you'd hear that producers were looking at alternatives to be able to use maybe barges to move the oil on water and take it to the export terminal instead of the pipeline. Also, in terms of infrastructure, we don't have incremental. More often than not, we try to maintain what we have. So those are some of the factors: theft, lack of accountability, damage, and many of the oil companies even say, you know what, rather than produce and I can't even export, or someone comes to steal it, I'll just cap in. So those issues, some of them still remain, some of them have been removed, but restarting production is more difficult than continuing if you're already producing. So once you cap in, restarting it's a process, right? And it's more and more difficult to get financing for crude. I mean, it's not much better than it was a few years ago when everybody was energy transition crazy, but those have been factors. And then more and more countries are discovering crude.
Right.
More countries are discovering crude. Recently, was it Sierra Leone or Senegal that discovered crude, right? Like last week, I was reading a story. So if your regime is more competitive for a long, they also kept the PIA for almost 20 years. And the Petroleum Act was already outdated. So all of these factors, there was no certainty as to what the PIA was. There were probably 10 versions or more. So investors want certainties. They want all of those issues. We didn't have it for many years, for almost 20 years. So we lost money. We lost investors. We lost new investment. Nobody will drop risk capital for uncertainty or for lack of clarity. That on one hand. So it's always affected our production, and it's been difficult. We struggle to meet our quotas. That's one. So on pricing too.
My apologies, Mr. Oni. Right, I was trying to interrupt you. We are constrained by time, and I do apologize for the interruption to the course of our conversation. Perhaps this is something that we will pick up as soon as there is a move as far as the conversation is concerned. But we do thank you for joining us and speaking with us this morning on Now Breakfast. Lagos, Nigeria, that is Ayode Leoni, our guest, an oil and gas expert, speaking to us this morning about the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, OPEC Plus, increasing its August oil production quota by 548,000 barrels per day. This is the fifth such increase that OPEC has done, and as we have learned this morning, it is something that has been planned and will continue until OPEC Plus meets in August. You're still listening to Radio Now 95.3 FM. We urge you to stay tuned. In a few short moments, we turn to the markets. Naira and Kobo brings you the prices of goods and services. Do stay with us.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.